meeting to order. Pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, meetings held remotely will require roll call votes for all action items. To streamline, we're going to attempt to combine all the action items into one combined motion at the end of the meeting, so only one roll call vote will be needed during the meeting. Meetings of the Board of Directors of the Cook County Health and Hospital Systems and its committees, including this committee, are being held remotely until a date determined due to the current circumstances concerning COVID-19. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Deere?
Deere is here.
Thank you. Director Harrington?
Present.
Director Munar?
Present.
Director Story?
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Chair Ryder?
Here.
And for the record, those directors also present, Director Guggenheim?
Present.
Director Ketting?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Debbie. Debbie, do we have any public testimony?
We did not receive any.
Okay. All right. Moving along. Next item on the agenda is the July 21st, 2022 Finance Committee meeting minutes. These were approved by the board at the June meeting, but are being presented for the committee's review and discussion if necessary. Are there any corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Any corrections? Any corrections? Hearing none, we're going to hold this for the combined motion. Next up is the proposed real estate matter request for approval to execute a lease agreement with the city of Blue Island for use of the parking lot adjacent to Blue Island Health Center, which is at 128th 100 South Western Avenue location in Blue Island. Andrea Gibson, our Chief Strategy Officer, I believe, is presenting this.
Yes, good morning, everyone. The purpose of this is to enter into a new lease for the parking lot adjacent to our Blue Island clinic. The lease had been originated with the developer who helped build the Blue Island clinic, and it was transferred to us. This lease kind of folds it into or aligns the language with what's typical in county leases. And so the request is to approve this lease for the next 5 years. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Andrea? All right, hearing none, we will hold. Thank you, Andrea. We'll hold this for the combined motion later in the meeting. Moving along, next up is the consideration of the proposed Cook County Health 2023 preliminary budget, and also the consideration of the proposed 3-year financial forecast for 2023 to 2025 strategic plan. Both are being presented by Pam Kazara, our Chief Financial Officer. Pam, you're up.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Pam Kazara, Chief Financial Officer for CCH. Go ahead, Debbie. So as a result of the continued public health emergency and the COVID response and the challenge with the tight labor market, we took a very conservative approach to the fiscal 23 budget. And much of the fiscal 23 budget is a continuation of things we started this year. On the screen, you can see our overarching general assumptions we used in the fiscal 23 budget. We did use 2021 volume as a baseline rather than going back to pre-COVID 2019 levels. We'll talk about that when we look at the volume. We increased surgical cases and procedures at Stroger and Provident, increase in ED and ICU at Provident, primarily related to the reopening of the ambulance runs, continued ramp up of the new service line initiatives, cardiac, neuro, and cancer, an increase to the PMPM capitation rate for county care. We did assume redetermination would begin, and we used an average membership of 390,000. The county increased their tax allocation to us 10 million for next year to cover correctional and public health. Then we layered in our newly eligible undocumented population and made some adjustments coming down the pike related to regulatory changes in reimbursement. Next slide, Debbie. So here you can see the volumes we used, which is the basis for the healthcare services side of the budget. You can see we looked back at 2020, we looked at 2021, we looked at this year's budget and where we were projecting to come out to arrive at the 2023 budget. So, you know, we haven't made our budget this year. We are projecting lower, so we came in more than this year projected, but less than this year's budget is where we landed. Next slide, Debbie. So as you look at the revenues that are associated with the volumes, again, we're more in line with this year's budget, fiscal 22 budget, but less than this year projected. This year is higher due to the continued supplemental payments we've received and the higher county care membership related to the ongoing pandemic. Next slide, Debbie. So we're coming in on the expense side, 3.987. We are balanced on the revenue side, 3.987 billion. As you look through the variances, you can see modest year-over-year increases by department and office. We'll talk about those when we go through each slide for each office. And then on the position side, the goal was to remain flat, no new net positions. However, there were some grant funded positions coming off of grant that we did add to the health fund. And we'll talk more about that. Next slide. So as we go through each department, next slide. Correctional health, you can see a year-over-year increase of 6 million. This is a 6 million of the 10 million tax allocation increase that I spoke of. To offset the ongoing costs around COVID-19 and the rising number of detainees in mental health, and then they are flat on the position side. Next slide. Health administration, a 32 million increase, primarily driven by the increase in positions, which is coming from the 2023-25 strategic plan and the initiatives that the CCH board approved, primarily around establishing and standing up 2 new departments, the Change Institute and the Patient Experience Program, and then strengthening various departments of administration, especially HR, and bringing on some long-term contracted staffing to employment. And there is an offsetting decrease in Stroger. Again, the goal being net zero new employees. Next slide. Provident, again, they're increased 8 million, basically flat on the position side. And the strategy there is driven by the restored ambulance runs, increases in supplies, increasing capacity for colonoscopy program, and resuming physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Next slide. Then on the outpatient side, flat on both the expense side and the FTE side, and they will realign and redistribute resources and people and services across the various clinics. Next slide. Stroger increase of 31 million, and here's the 52 decrease on the position side. The increase on the expense side primarily driven by the increased volume and inflationary increases related to supplies and the ramp up of the new service line investments. And again, in order to have a balanced budget, we did freeze vacant positions greater than 2 years. There are no layoffs in this budget, and if needed, we can repurpose other vacancies to fill these specific positions. Next slide. Public health. Starting with the top line, the health fund there, you can see the 4 million year-over-year increase, which is the 4 million of the 10 million increase in tax allocation. And then also those 44 contact tracers that the grant funding was ending, we're moving to the health fund. And then the rest of the increases in grants, which the big ones are the CDC Health Grant, 12.6, the Local Health Protection Grant, 6.4, and the Community Health Worker Grant of 5.2. Next slide. So moving on to health plan services. Increase by 48 million on the expense side, basically flat on the position side. And again, a repeat of what we thought would happen this year. Projecting membership to decline due to the redetermination beginning and reduction in auto assignment to 35%. We used the average membership again of 390,000. We did include an increase in the 3% of PM, and the rest of the expense to be consistent with current trend. Next slide. This one is a graph similar to what we showed last year, with the membership slowly ticking down over the course of the year as redetermination begins. And then the last slide is just a breakdown between the various populations. Overall, the average membership around the 390,000 mark, although the mix of the populations is different between the various. I think we saw an increase actually in the a decrease in the ACA population and an increase in the seniors and persons with disabilities population, for example. But again, the overall staying about that 390,000. And then next slide is the calendar. And today we are recommending the budget for consideration. And if approved, we'll go to the board next week for approval. And that concludes the budget presentation.
Great, thanks, Pam. Are there any questions for Pam? This is, for some of us, this is the fourth time hearing the presentation.
Yeah.
Opportunities to hear public comment and to be briefed on that and have our questions answered. All right.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about, yeah, and Debbie, if you can try to make it bigger, but yet get most of it in the screen there. When I keep playing with it, I can talk about it in pieces too. So this is our long-term forecast, and what we do here is we start with the budget, the FY 2023 proposed, and then we project out the next 2 years, and this will be included in the strategic plan. We worked with the county on this and to develop the assumptions around the forecast piece of it. On the revenue side, for example, it's largely driven by the county care membership. And they come up with a conservative, a baseline, and an optimistic. And we have included the baseline in the things that, that affect that redetermination, patient choice, et cetera. So we've used the baseline, and then on the hospital revenues, similarly, they take into consideration future volumes, changes in payer mix and reimbursement rates. And again, they come up, they look at historical trends, policy changes, economic conditions, and come up with a conservative, a baseline, and an optimistic option. And again, we use the baseline option. On the expense side, we have inflators in there for COLAs and benefit changes, supply increase inflators. And then the last piece, the disclaimer I want to make, is around the pension. The county now gives us, we include it both in the revenue and the expense for dollar. And so it's been as high, as low as 80 and as high, I think last year, is 300 million. And that is driven, as you know, by inflation and market and discount rates, and not driven by increases in employees or a reflection on poor operations performance. So we have included an amount here, but again, that won't be determined until the actuaries run their numbers at the end of the year. So it is really more of a placeholder, and it's the same numbers included both on the revenue and the expense side. But what this shows is that the conclusion is
Zeros out.
Correct. So the conclusion here is that expenses will outpace our revenues without any management intervention. And of course, the goal here is to be balanced. The other thing is that the top piece here is on an accrual basis, and the main differences between which we'll look at the cash in a second, but is that we include the pension and we include depreciation and amortization in our financials, and the county does not. Okay. So as you scroll down, Debbie, then on a cash basis, you can see there 3987 billion revenues, 3987 billion expense, and basically a balanced budget. Whoops. But in the out years, again, using their revenue forecasting model, they are projecting that we would, again, that our expenses will outpace our revenues without any management intervention. But again, we would obviously correct for that and do what would be necessary to have a balanced budget. Sorry. And it was a little difficult to see. Any other questions around the projection?
Any questions for Pam on this? All right, Pam.
Great, thanks.
We're going to hold the budget, the preliminary budget, and the financial forecast for approval with the combined motion. Now we're going to go to items under the Chief Procurement Officer. Contracts and procurement items, but I believe, Charles, you're not presenting any of these, correct? They're all going to be presented by the contract sponsors.
Yeah, no, sir. But I would like to do a little housekeeping first. Good morning, Charles
Sure.
Jones, Chief Procurement Officer, Cook County Health. 47 contracts before you today. All 47 required responsive letters from the Office of Contract Compliance. We have 28 returned and 19 outstanding. So with that, the executive sponsors will be presenting.
Okay. So let's go. Let's start with Dr. Hasbrook to present the first 20 items, which have to do with the Cook County Department of Public Health.
Great. Good morning. So yes, let me run through these. And again, I think we've seen these a number of times, but I will try to be brief and group them as appropriate. So the first two are related to communicate. Yes.
Before you go, if anybody has any questions on these as we go along, because I'm working multiple screens through one device, just go ahead and jump in with your question. Just make sure you're not talking over another director, so we get one question at a time. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Great. No, perfect. Okay, so the first two are related to communications. The first one is an extension of a grant-funded services for BCT Consulting. It is for our website. It was originally a sole source contract. We're moving to a competitive process. This is kind of bridge funding as we compete for the next vendor. So that's $63,000. The next one, also related to communications, is Flowers Communications. It is to provide marketing and communication services related to the COVID outreach and marketing. Again, an RFP competitive process. That's to execute that contract. So those are the two communication related ones. The next three are related to our environmental health portfolio, and these have to do with lead abatement and something we call healthy homes assessment, which is basically when we go into the home to inspect for lead and to remediate for lead. We also look at other risks in the home, such as mold and carbon monoxide and other risks while we're in there. So the first one goes to Ames Construction. Again, these are competitive grant funded contracts to be executed. That's for lead abatement, 1 million, just over 1 million. The next one is KA Environmental, again for lead abatement services, and these are all for low income and middle income housing in suburban Cook. The third one is to Urban Efficiencies Group, and that is for the Healthy Homes Assessment. Again, kind of a tag on to the lead abatement and assessment that we do for homes in Cook County. So those are those three, environmental health related lead abatement. The next one is a sole source, and this is related to our behavioral health portfolio, and it is for spectrometers, which is equipment, and some proprietary software that has to do with kind of drug testing and really measuring for fentanyl and other things and substances. That's Brunker Scientific. So that is a sole source, and for that reason. The next one is Saldemar Solutions, and that is really to bring in a contractor or vendor to really assist with the procurement team in specifically pushing through a number of our grant deliverable contracts and things related to grant deliverables, just to give additional bandwidth to the procurement team to help us be responsive to the grant deliverables there. And so that is also a competitive RFP process for 483,000. I'm sorry, for 102,000. I'm jumping ahead. So that's those two. Then the next group, the next 13 are all under one large program with braided grant funded resources. And it's what we call the behavioral or building healthy communities program. Again, competitive grants through our RFP process. We had around 60 or so, and we're awarding 40. So the next 13 are those recipients. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly because they all kind of apply to the same RFP. We had a menu of different strategies that they could apply for given their needs. And so these grants range from just under 100,000 to just under 500,000. And many of the recipients may have picked more than one interventions, and that's why the money varies. So the first one is TCA Health, and that's for 483,000. Again, this is the braided funding. The next one is Paso West, 335,000. Then we go to Family Christian Health Center for 299,000. Access Community Health Network, 200,000. Alivio Medical Center for 200,000. Pillars Community Health, just under 200,000. Suburban Primary Health Care Council, again, just under 200,000. Latino Alzheimer's and Memory Disorders Alliance, just under 200,000. Sisters Working It Out, 188,000. First Baptist Church, Melrose Park, 150,000. Thinking Beyond, 147,000. Center of Concern, 139, and then Seasons Community Outreach Services. They focus on seniors and the elderly. That's 93,000. Previously, the board had requested having a summary of the interventions and grants, which we'll provide for you all this week, just for your reference. And those are all of mine.
Thank you, Dr. Hasbrook. Next, we have contracts 21 and 22. Health Plan Services, the executive sponsor presenting will be Aaron Galiner, the Chief Administrative Officer for Health Plan Services. Aaron,
Mr. Chair,
first.
are we with questions?
Sure, if you'd like to go back to the Department of Health.
No, I
Contracts.
do have a question for the organizations that Charles just mentioned. Charles, how many
That
of
was
those
Dr.
organizations? Excuse me?
Dennis, that was Dr. Hasbrook.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was
Dr. Hasbrook did. The screens are jacked up on my phone. So Dr. Hasbrook, of those organizations that you just mentioned, how many of those are serving minority communities and how many of them are minority organizations?
Yeah, great question. I don't have that at my fingertips. I will tell you that of the 40, I think 39 or 40 or so that were funded, all of them were in suburban Cook. Many of them would meet that definition. I don't know that we broke them down like that, but I can certainly get that information for you. Some of them are obvious by the names, but we can provide that to you.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
all right. Any other questions? All right, Aaron, go ahead.
Good morning, directors. There are two transmittals related to health plan services before you today. The first is for the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois. This is an extension through calendar year 2025, which makes this contract coterminous with our state of Illinois contract. This is just a straight extension at the current rates, and this is a mandated contract by the state of Illinois under our MCCN contract with them. And so we are just extending again to make it coterminous with the state contract. Similarly, the next transmittal related to collective medical technologies. This is the result of an RFP that the state of Illinois did. And all the MCOs are required to contract with collective medical technologies for real-time alerts for ED and inpatient admissions. And again, this is extending this contract through 2025 to be coterminous with the state of Illinois MCCN contract that we have with the state. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Aaron? All right, hearing none. The next contract being presented will be by Ileana Mora, the Chief Operating Officer of Ambulatory Services. Ileana?
And Chair Ryder, this is Debbie. John Prendergast, Director of Patient Support Center, is going to be presenting on behalf of Ileana.
Okay, great.
Good morning, John's here. So this is a contract for private ambulance services with Blackhawk, also doing business more commonly as ATI Ambulance. This is a 1-year renewal extension and increase. They provide advanced life support, basic life support, critical care, isolation, transports for all of CCH and also supporting Department of Public Health when needed. And the increase is related to restarting ambulance runs at Provident. So this would be providing 12 hours of standby support starting next month, and then also what we call posting when available. So when their ambulance is not actively transporting, have that ambulance standing by close to Provident at no additional charge for those extra 12 hours. And then lastly, the expectation is to go out to bid shortly after this 1-year renewal.
Question.
Yes.
If the ambulance, if the operation at the Provident ED does not start, what happens to this contract?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you. So as we are asking for a, I guess, an out clause where we would be able to remove the standby ambulance if it's not needed with 90 days notice. If there was, which I haven't heard, a delay for the September start, we would have to go back and I believe ATI would be accepting of that, but that has not come up yet in my recent conversations.
So there's no documentation or memorandum agreeing to if there's a delay, an operational delay, that this vendor will be willing to stand down the start date of September 1st.
So Otis, remember that when we do this here, we're giving the approval for them to go out and negotiate the contract. There's not necessarily there's not a written agreement yet between us and Blackhawk, and we're in this case.
Okay, so I would respectfully request that consideration relative to my question be considered in future discussions with ATI Ambulance of Tinley Park.
We'll make sure to do that.
Yeah. So Chair, if I may, I can jump in from a procurement standpoint. We do have termination for convenience in the contract, and we will evaluate this as necessary, up to including termination if not needed.
Thank you, Charles.
Great. Any other questions on this item? All right. Hearing none, I believe the next three are for Dr. Fegan to present.
And Chair Ryder, it's going to be Dr. Rudolph Kumapli. He's going to be presenting on behalf of Dr. Fegan.
Great, thank you. It's all yours.
Good morning, Chair Ryder and board directors. I'll be presenting 4 transmittals. The first 3 are related to the Department of Surgery, and the last one for pain. So the first transmittal is an extended increase of the contract in the amount of $2.36 million. This will be for supplies, implanted plate screws used in the repair of facial fractures sustained in trauma, and would also be used in oral surgery, plastic surgery, and ENT procedures. The original contract was via RFP in 2018 and was for a sum of $3 million. We are exercising an option to have a single 2-year extension, and the slight increase in amount is based on the increase in our oral surgery volumes. The next transmittal is for an execution of a contract in the amount of $642,860 with Striker Sales Corporation. And this is a one-time capital purchase to replace end-of-life power equipment, drills, saws, etc., which are used in neurosurgery, orthopedic, trauma, podiatric surgery, and hand surgery. And will be used at both Stroger Hospital and Providence Hospital. We would also purchase necessary additional equipment, trays, and tourniquets used in extremity surgery. This will be for financial year 2022. The next transmittal, which is also under the Department of Surgery, will be to execute a contract in the amount of $427,817. This is via GPO, and it's through the company Becton Dickinson, doing business as Care Fusion. And we are basically procuring surgical instruments and trays. Again, this is a one-time capital purchase to replace worn-out surgical instruments and create additional surgical trays as we expand surgical services in both Providence and Stroger. I would say for a health system the size of ours, which is including Stroger and Providence, one would expect to spend approximately just about $400,000. It computes to about $30 per surgery, and we do about 14,000 surgeries. This is again for financial year 2022. And the last transmittal, which is also for execution of a contract with Medtronic USA in the sum of $333,000. This will be for the pain service, and is to obtain osteocool coaxial bipolar radiofrequency ablation system. That's quite a mouthful. But this is basically used to treat painful spinal metastasis with cryotherapy. So by treating these patients in the clinic, we avoid having these folks admitted to the inpatient services. So these are the 4 transmittals of the I have presented, and I will take any questions.
Are there any questions on these 3 items? All right. Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next 4 or 5 items, which are going to be presented
by Shannon Andrews, our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer.
Thank you, Chair Ryder. Good morning, Board of Directors. This is Shannon Andrews, Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. The first item before you is a request to extend and an increase a contract with a company doing business as Voice. This company is for video remote interpretation services throughout the system. This is the final 1-year renewal option on this contract, which was originally awarded back in 2018. This contractor provides, in addition to video remote interpretation services, the translation of documents here at the organization, as well as proficiency assessment testing. They offer access to over some 240 languages and dialects to best address the needs of our patient base. The next item is a companion piece to this and is also for interpreter services. While the first dealt specifically with video interpreter services, this contract is for audio, which is a phone system that is again available throughout the system. There are approximately 142 phones that are available throughout the system. They are primarily a point of usage for our on-call centers as well as admissions. This request is to amend to extend for 1 year and to increase in the dollar value of $750,000. The Interpreter Services Department will be going out with a new solicitation to consider combining these efforts to see if there are any inefficiencies in having one company that provide these services. In addition, there have been some advances made in this space, and so we're looking forward to having a replacement contract that contemplates our current needs and to explore other options that can enhance the service provided. The next 3 contracts are the result of an RFP that was advertised in January of this year to provide an inventory management system for the organization. The solicitation was advertised with the intent of the potential of multiple awardees. The first contract is to execute with Part Excellence Systems. This is a 5-year contract with 2 2-year renewal options. And essentially this portion of the contract, this portion of the solution will provide maintenance and inventory for management system that will allow for barcoding and replenishing of inventory in some 75 nursing and storeroom locations throughout the agency, and providing real on-time inventory management for over 11,000 items. The dollar value of this contract is roughly $2.4 million. The next companion piece to this is with a company, Pixis, and this dollar value is for roughly $2.1 million. Again, it's a 5-year contract with 2 2-year renewal options. This solution has a focus on the tracking of tissue implants in designated procedural departments. It is really set up to support our clinical and surgical procedural departments. It too will allow for tracking and real time inventory management in terms of replenishment and tracking of inventory in our clinics and procedural areas. And the last of this solution is a tracking system to assist with and better manage and provide efficiencies with the delivery of inventory throughout the system. This is a 5-year contract. The vendor is doing business as SIFT, SYFT, out of Tampa, Florida. This too is a 5-year contract, I believe, with 2 2-year renewal options. And the best way to think of this is it will give us the ability to deliver and track packages in the way that we are all accustomed to in our own homes, in terms of having a barcode system, devices that allow for electronic signatures. Currently, we have a very manual process, and we believe that these three solutions together will provide for enhanced efficiencies in delivery of inventory throughout the system. Again, this contract is valued at $268,480. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. This is Pam Casera. I have two, both for revenue cycle. The first one up is for 3M. This is a amend and increase contract to turn on some functionality with our 3M coding solution so that we can bill Indiana Medicaid. Next one is also an extended increase for Keystone Advisors. These are revenue cycle interim leadership that we want to keep in place until we can get some folks hired. We are looking to increase through November, and the amount is $839,500. Both of these contracts have been vetted for sole source previously.
Okay. All right. And that, thanks, Pam. I believe now we're going to are there any questions for Pam? No. All right. We're going to Angela O'Banion, our interim chief information officer. Angela.
Hello. Good morning, directors. This is Angela, Chief Information Officer. I have 3 contracts before you. The first is an extend and increase for a GPO contract, which is DocuSign. As you know, most people know DocuSign for its signatory processes, but we have improved efficiencies and workflows for over 40 departments, both inside Cook County Health and with other partners in the state, et cetera, to make our processes and workflows more efficient and eliminate paper and digitize. And again, it's for an extended increase, and it is under our CDW GPO. The next one is also extend and increase, and this is for augmented services, workflow services, and this is Salesforce. So for example, we use this for our dual employment surveys as an example of some of the things that we use this particular enterprise solution for. And the last one is in support of our information security strategy. It provides some additional firewall protection and also competitively bid through our GPO. And the solution for this is known as Palo Alto. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Yeah, any questions for Angela?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I heard that Angela referenced her title as the Chief Information Officer, a congratulatory acknowledgement. I think that I was not aware.
Israel had long since dropped the interim, so I was following his model. Thank you.
Well, congratulations are in order. I'm sure the board is appreciative of your efforts, and I just want to acknowledge what I heard to be factual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats, Mr. Chair. I'd like to congratulate her as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Director Deere.
Oh, that was good catch. Thank you. Congratulations.
All right. Well, thank you, Angela. Congratulations, as everyone else is noting. We're gonna move on. We've had a lot of items, and we're in the home stretch now.
The next set are going to be presented by Valerie Amos, our Chief Human Resources Officer.
Good morning, Chair Ryder and the board. Thank you so much. This is Valerie Amos, Chief Human Resources Officer. This contract before you is for Kirby Bates and Associates. The purpose of this contract is really to extend and increase. We are being supported by interim leadership roles regarding or from this contract as we continue to recruit for C-suite as well as, other leadership positions within the organization. This is really an opportunity for us to extend and increase. The next two contracts are also staffing related contracts. So this contract is with Advanced Resources. Advanced Resources have been providing support for HR personnel. As you know, HR is rebuilding. We have been rebuilding our team and have hired a number of permanent folks within our space. We still have some vacancies within HR. So in order to operationalize and support the organization, we have this relationship with Advanced Resources. They have brought a number of folks in to support our needs during our peak times. Such as the learning management system folks, compensation support, as well as recruitment support. So this contract before you is to continue with them and to extend. The next contract is with Cornerstone through Arlington Resources, and it's pretty much exactly the same, a different organization who has been supporting us with contract resources to help us operationalize our work as we continue to recruit. They have been bringing us recruiters and contract support such as HR assistants to help us onboard individuals. I will take questions if there are any.
Any questions for Valerie? All right, hearing that, we're gonna move along, and I believe this. Thank you, Valerie. I believe this next set, this next one, item number 41, has numerous folks listed as the executive sponsor, so I'm not sure who's gonna pick this one up.
I'm gonna, the letter A, will pick it up. Shannon Andrews, Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. I'm happy to join with our Chief Experience Officer and the Interim Chief Administrative Officer, Operations and Development to present the next item, which is a request to execute a new contract. The vendor is with Morrison Management Specialist, and this contract will provide culinary managerial services on behalf of the healthcare system. They will be managing all of our food operations here at the organization. This contract is the result of a very aggressive RFP process with an extensive review by our evaluation committee to present to you a request for a 5-year contract not to exceed the dollar value of $31,729,306. There's also some additional high quality fans programming that will be affiliated with this, as well as working with in the future our partners over at the Public Health Department on some good food initiatives to ensure that we're providing optimal service for our patient base. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Are there? Thanks, Shannon. All right, moving along. The request number 42 through 47 are going to be presented by Lawrence Reed, the Interim Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, directors. This first request is for reference laboratory services and for testing for monkeypox and for COVID testing. Next. This is for service and maintenance of our water purification systems for lab, for dialysis, and so forth here at Stroger Hospital. The next one is for glass in the exterior of the building, some entry areas, doors, and so forth. Next, we have a maintenance contract for our pharmacy system for vial filling, dosage, and packaging service on that equipment. The next contract is for inpatient life safety, primarily fire protection, and drawings at Stroger Hospital and Provident Hospital. And our last one, Mr. Chairman, is for a new car washer for Stroger Hospital. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Are there any questions on any of these items? All right. Sorry. Hearing none. Those were 47 items. Charles, do you have any follow-up on any of these?
No, sir.
All right. So we're going to hold these for the combined motion. Next, we're going to go to Charles so he can report on our MWBE WBE participation, and then on our emergency purchases. Go ahead, Charles.
Good morning again. Charles Jones, Chief Procurement Officer for Cook County Health. Looking over to the fore right here for June 24th of this year, we presented before you 13 contracts. Of those 13, 6 had contract-specific goals for just shy of $10 million. Unfortunately, during the month, there was no minority vendor serving as prime contractors here, but we did have 3 as subcontractors for $1.6 million and 16%. During that particular month, we ended up with 3 waivers for a little bit over $5 million. The contract for product and services for microfiber mops, floor mats, and carpet runner rentals for $2.025 million ended up being a full waiver, as well as the contract for short-term care and long-term care on behalf of managed care, $2.25 million. And then lastly, our service contract for healthcare evaluations and strategic advisory service for $900,000 ended up with a waiver. So 3 contracts there with waivers for $5.1 million. Looking all the way to the first, right, as we look at the year-to-date numbers and how we're tracking and trending, 54 contracts, a little bit less than $300 million, had contract-specific goals. 5 of those, $5.3 million, 2% were primes, 31, $64.8 million subcontracting opportunities. So combined total there is 36 contracts, a little bit $70.1 million approximately for 24% year-to-date participation. And there too you see the 18 waivers over the period of this time, last 7 months. Next slide, Debbie, for the bar chart. So here we see again for June, 17%, which brings the year-to-date down a little bit to 24%. Any questions?
All right, Charles, doesn't look like we have any questions, so keep going.
Thank you. I don't believe we had any emergency purchase for the month of July.
Okay.
I don't think, yes, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. We're now going to go again back to Pam Casara, who's going to present grant award related items for us to receive and file.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Ryder. So we do have 3.6 million, almost 3.7 million of grants this month to receive and file. 2 of them are public health grants. All of them are renewals. And both Dr. Hasbrook and Ileana might be on if there's any specific questions related to the grant. If there are none, we'll go on to the financials.
So we'll hold the grant award related items for the combined motion in order to receive and file. Go ahead, Pam.
Great, thanks. So for the 7 months ended June 30, we are still in a positive variance to budget, 39.9 million, and on a cash basis, 286.3. The commentary is is pretty much the same. On the revenue side, is variances due to some catch-up payments that we received. And then on the expense side, we continue to have a negative variance to budget and purchase services being offset by a positive variance in salaries and wages. County Care is at a 12 million gain year to date, and their membership remains over 436,000. Next slide, Debbie. So here you can see, just looking down through the variance column, total revenues 41.5 million over budget. And now this through this month, total expenses are basically right at budget. So our net income 71.8 million. The budget was to be at 32, and which makes that 39.9 million better than budget. Next slide. The volumes continue to lag behind budget, but are better than prior year to date. You can see the month of June are almost actually dead even with last year, June. But again, volumes better than prior year to date. And as we look at the next slide, graphically, you can see the trends of over the last 4 years since the pandemic started of the various volumes slowly coming back up. Next slide, Debbie. We did change this one back to a bar chart on the payer mix with the newly eligible 42 to 54 and 55 to 64. We thought it was graphically easier to see or will be going forward to be able to see Medicaid climb and the decrease in uncompensated. So that's what we'll be watching for here. Next slide. And on the revenue cycle, continues to do well. They did take a dip in AR and AR greater than 90 this month. Again, we are ramping up resources to help blitz that old AR, and hopefully we'll be getting that back in line in the next month or so. Next slide. And similarly on denials, we're not meeting our internal goal, but we are meeting the industry goal of less than 2% of cash. And then we maybe we added this one last month, the quarterly government billing denials are trending down. So again, a mixture of meeting and not meeting, but continuing to trend in the right direction. Charitable and public program expenditures are trending up at this point, 7 months in. But again, we'll be watching this one to see if, especially the uncompensated, does come down over the rest of the year as those 42 to basically 65s are now covered, and will be shifting from charity to a Medicaid product. Next slide. And then on all our savings initiative and revenue cycle capture initiatives, we're on track, 7/12 of the goal at 15.2 million. Next slide. County Care is at, as I mentioned, 12 million. Their budget was actually 21 million, so slightly behind budget. That's being driven a combination of the higher membership and the higher clinical cost per member per month. And that is being caused by the IBNR estimate and recent high cost claims cases. Next slide. And more care, less 4.1 loss. The budget was actually 6, so losing less than budgeted as we continue to wrap it up and in anticipation of exiting. Any questions?
Any questions for Pam on the financials?
I don't have Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Pam, but maybe Aaron could comment on what Pam just shared with us about county care expenditures, maybe creeping up. Aaron, would you say that's maybe because of delay, hesitancy of the county care members to receive care over the last maybe 6 to 8 months, and people are now coming back into the system to receive care that maybe was delayed. Any thoughts?
Director Story, yes, I do think we've seen some of that, especially early in this calendar year, as we're looking at some of the underlying data. The biggest driver in this month of some of the fluctuation was we had several high cost claims that discharged. And the way the state of Illinois billing works is that there's not interim billing process as there is in some other programs. So, if it's a long stay patient, they may have been inpatient for 12 months and then discharged. So you end up with a high cost claim, and that can cause some fluctuations in our IBNR estimates. But to your question, yes, we do think we've seen some pent up demand. And part of that looks like it's also getting reflected in our risk adjustment scores, which we just recently received in this past week. And it looks like some of our risk adjustment has increased as well. So that should help offset some of that cost on the revenue side once we build that into the estimates.
All right, any follow-up on that? If not, any other questions? All right, hearing none, we are going to go right now real quickly to our CEO Israel Rocha. Israel, do you have anything else before we conclude the meeting?
No, I just want to make sure that we clear one thing. We are very happy. Our appointment process takes a little bit of time. And we have a final clearance step that goes to the OIG. And so we don't make formal announcements on the appointment until we get everything back. And that can sometimes be a little bit confusing because we've talked to the candidates and we've made the appointments. So want to be clear that once we receive the formal appointment from the OIG, we will be very happy to announce the appointment of our CIO. And so we will be back with the board once that has been, we have received all paperwork back from the OIG.
All right, noted. So let's not jump the gun. All right, great. With that, let's go to the combined motion. So I will be looking for a motion to accept item 3A, the July 21st, 2022 Finance Committee meeting minutes, approve item 3B, request to execute a lease agreement with the city of Blue Island for use of the parking lot adjacent to the Blue Island Health Center. Approve item 3C, the proposed Cook County Health fiscal year 2023 preliminary budget. Approve item 3D, the proposed 3-year financial forecast for fiscal 2023 through fiscal year 2025 strategic plan. Approve item 4A, contracts procurement items containing requests number 1 through 47, subject to completion of review by contract compliance, and receive and file grant reward related items. We will need a roll call vote on this motion. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, will the secretary please call the roll for the vote?
Roll call vote on the combined motion. Aye or nay, Director Deere?
Aye.
Director Harrington?
Aye.
Director Munar is absent. Director Story? Director Story? Director Story?
Does not Sound like Director,
He may have stepped away. And Chair Ryder?
aye.
Okay, going back to Director Story. Are you present, Director Story? Okay, you have 3 yays and 2 absent.
All right, great. The motion passes. The next regular meeting of the committee is on Friday, September 23rd at 9 a.m. Of course, we'll all be meeting at our next board meeting. Prior to that, we'll consider the items that we just moved today. With no other agenda or without no other items on the agenda, we've exhausted the agenda. So I'm going to hold the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.